Welcome back to OceanBlock 2, Episode 3. As you can see, the base has changed a little bit. I'm still mainly building in this northwest quadrant. You can see I've moved the ore generating system to down below. So this room here is filled up a little bit. I decided I wanted to have my ores being processed immediately, so I guess this is version like 3 or 4 of my sieving setup. I'm so indecisive, just always tearing stuff down, rebuilding. A significant reason for this change here is actually the main controller. If we shift right click, the netherite upgrade, I only recently learned this after episode 2 there, multiplies the controller radius by 8. Now I think because of shaders, oh look at that, the green box is showing up, it wasn't earlier. You can see how massive it is. So the normal radius of this controller is times by 8. So we can see it's looking at drawers upstairs. It's looking at all of these random drawers here. You can imagine how powerful this is as a bit of an early game inventory system if you put a filter. And since this is a bunch of items in a drawer network, you can filter just coal. I guess the system here is jammed with cooked salmon. So what happens is anything I want to cook, well, you can't see it, but there's a conduit coming back in to put the items into the drawer network. But it'll only put them in if there's a drawer, if there's somewhere to put them. Grabbing all the cooked stuff out of the system here. I like to lock my drawers first, because if you don't, and you tie them to the network, they could just start receiving any type of item. It would not be good. So since the main network's already clicked on, and I have this in multiple mode, just like that, we've added it. So now if I do that, and I put those in, you'll see the furnace is going to start draining even more in, which is sweet. Now that there's a place for that item to go, it's going to start depositing it, and then later it's going to cook those. You know, max upgrade. That's pretty cool. I cook glass like this, stone for building this large base. So it's the same idea. This whole drawer network, like even over there, there's drawers. It's a pretty massive area. I think it's really cool. For the material generation here, we have netherite everything. Netherite hammers, cobble gen. I've tried to build it so if I wanted to expand, I could just, tile them up, up or backwards and make more. I'm using a lot of gravel right now to make, all that concrete over there. So I actually have redstone, stopping the hammer from working. We will leave it off so we can get lots of gravel, which means this system is eventually going to run out. Now what's interesting is all of these drawers, again, are tied to the main controller, so we can see all these items from there. What's also interesting is I have put access points for gravel, sand, and dust, and they're filtered with Ender IO filters, pulling the item in. I tried getting away with just one of these, and then, 3 pipes, 3 filters, but it prefers to completely pull one type of item out before going on to the next one. So I think it's just easier to have a dedicated one per. They're relatively cheap at this point for me. It's trying to push all the items into that one access point. It doesn't matter which, but yeah, all of these are all connected, trying to push the items into the access point. Some of the netherrack, sluicing it over there, makes glowstone. Now, why do I have lead? Well, that's cast iron. That's why it's down here. We get some blazing powder, ancient debris, coal. Again, because it's all one system, that furnace is actually being powered from this coal. So yeah, being able to filter and pull off these access points is massive, especially if you can make a drawer network this big. It's pretty crazy. And my nether system, unfortunately, always runs out of basalt, because I don't have a better way to collect basalt than using these pickaxes. We got a basalt farm up here. I will throw pickaxes in there. This was a terrible place to build this too, because it's so close to my upstairs that when I have a magnet on, it's actually pulling the basalt into my inventory rather than going into that network there. And again, this compacting drawer with basalt is linked here, so all we have to do, side quest time. I'm trying to record here, and this annoying noise is happening. I kind of forgot, but there's a built-in muffler upgrade. Okay, I've just kind of made it a lot quieter. I don't want to completely mute it because I do want to remind myself that this needs, you know, redstone control. I don't want to have the security upgrade. That's actually what's making the noise, because instead of blowing up from being over pressure, it's just releasing the air when the pressure gets too high. All right, where was I? Yeah, so the access point, again, is going to have a filter pulling out basalt, and then it'll get processed to crush. Then some of that will turn into netherrack. Some of it will turn into, I think, you know, ancient debris scrap. The netherrack gets stored here, and then, of course, we hammer it to crushed, and then it gets processed again into, like, glowstone and blazing stuff, powder. So one of the main reasons to have, I guess, version 3 of this ore system is, again, since all of these compacting drawers are linked to the access point where all of the chunks are getting generated, we compact it into the cluster here, and then every one of these, and believe me, it took a while. I missed the old Ender IO from 1.12 where you could actually set a filter in the menu. So I have to actually pull this out, set it, and then put it in. I don't know why they got rid of that feature. But anyways, we are set to clusters. Clusters are going to get processed into here. And they only get processed when there's 9 of them. If I was to do this, it does 9 at a time to make a block. And then it pushes to the nearest inventory. I think it prefers north. Originally, I had this setup facing a different direction, and I didn't have an air gap between here. What was happening was these jars would push the output into the next jar instead of the compacting drawer. So I found it just easier to make an air gap. And it's not super big, right? But anyways, we can get blocks, ingots, and the nuggets, which is super awesome because, again, from that terminal there, looking at that drawer, we can see all of these items. So it's making crafting for me at this point of the early game very awesome. I think my best bet to get away from using pickaxes in the basalt generation is to get to AE2. You can use those annihilation planes. I'm coming over this way. We can see we've got a little bit of a tunnel action going on here with some nice glowing glass. I built all this without shaders on, and then I've turned shaders back on, just for performance and all that. I guess you can't see as good. It still looks kind of cool. You can kind of make out a faint outline. All of these materials, too, are all materials I'm using that are really easy to get, that I can get in abundance. That's kind of my limited block type. Making this, once I figured out what I was doing with the copy-paste gadget, was really cool, but I actually corrupted my world probably 5 times. If you're doing any kind of copying and you're copying modded blocks, be very careful. I would always run like a, you know, backup start. And I think you can give it a name, but it doesn't seem to work for me. I run backups before I play with the building gadget now, because the problem is you can maybe copy. What are we in? What mode are we in here? Let's clear this and let's do. So what I would do is I'd pick the corner of this box, and then I would go over to the water way over here. And that's actually lined up with the center of my escape pod. That's dead center there. And it gives me a really nice reference point to then copy this shape, paste it here, there, and there. All the quadrants are done. Like I was saying, we select that piece, and we select, like, say, this piece here. There's our box. That's cool. And when we go into this mode, this is where the problem started. Notice we've copied this area, and now we go to paste. It's going to render in kind of ghost blocks, so you can kind of see, you know, how this works. And then if you want, you can hit G and hit anchor. It allows you to walk around, and then you can tweak it like 16 blocks or so in every direction to try to figure out, you know, where you want it. But the material list here, I really wish you could delete things. Like, I wish I could copy something and then I could say, you know what, we don't actually want the drawers in the compacting drawer to show up. Just delete them. Because what was happening was, when I copied this massive area, the ender tank here would actually cause a rendering glitch when I went to go, you know, in the paste mode and, you know, see the ghost outline. It actually corrupted my world where I couldn't log into it. It was, I had to restore a backup. And we've got templates here. If we do quad layout, Got a nice clean layout now. We pop this in here, and we pop this in here, and we click load. What actually was happening too, that same ender tank was causing the game to corrupt. As soon as I clicked save, and the picture showed up here, it corrupted. So I thought it'd be really cool, you know, you could go through here and delete materials you don't want. Because notice, when I copy the quadrant, I'm actually getting a bit of that escape pod, the jump cushions and all this other nonsense. I wish you could kind of edit the template. Going to the roof here, you can see we got a lot of nature and grass and all that. Now that we have that template loaded and we click paste, got to get rid of the anchor, I guess. And notice, we anchor this here, that glowstone block is dead center of the escape pod. So all I did, once I had a nice template that was clean, you click rotate, and then you just pasted the other 3 sides. But yeah, it's all stone block here. If we can look at the material list, I used the redstone as kind of corner blocks because this was an air block, so I couldn't click on it. So there's a reference point there of redstone, and then one up. I guess it's on the other side of the wall. You can't see it. But yeah, too bad you couldn't, delete this. Because what happens when you paste it, you just have to have these ingredients in your inventory, and then if it's missing, it just ignores it. Which is fine, but still, I wish I could delete certain modded blocks. And I was trying to make a GitHub report too, to kind of post this issue to building gadgets and Ender storage, I think this is. But when I did a small scale test, it copied this no problem. So I don't know if it's just because of the sheer size of it or what. I might have some footage here, but when I was making this room, the first one, it was full of all kinds of water and nonsense, because I wasn't, even though all of this stuff was in the copy paste, all these modded blocks, once I removed the ender storage, when I realized that's the one in the crash log, that was the culprit. Since none of these blocks were going to be in my inventory when I did the paste, everything would remain as a water source block. So I had an absolute nightmare trying to clean up all of the water source that was all over this area. But once I got it cleaned up, I copied this empty room. Of course, I pasted it. A little bit of a learning curve for me, but I figured I'd point that out because it is awesome for building underwater. I kind of did it the hard way. I don't know if anybody knows this, but I figure I'll ask. How do you get the smithing template? I see it's a vanilla item. I don't know how it works. I've not played these new versions, but that was kind of the one thing that kind of ruined me when I was trying to do this. I realized, well, I've got a lot of this. Get a lot of airship drops with netherite. That's easy to get, but I have no clue how to get these. I see once you get one, you can duplicate them, which is awesome. And it doesn't show me if there's like loot, at a nether fortress. Can you find them somewhere, somehow? But I had went down a bit of a path here with occultism, thinking, oh, I can do all this. So I got it all kind of made, but I didn't realize this occultism is pretty complicated. This Abra's commanding conjure, you got to sacrifice a pig and then fight a hoglin. I ultimately ended up giving up once I realized what was involved. Maybe I'll come back to it, but occultism's like a pretty deep rabbit hole for me to get into right now, not knowing much about it. They've got a really good chapter here in the quest book. You can see I actually used this to work my way through it, and I kind of stopped thinking, okay, now I can do it on my own. But look how massive this is. It's whoops, it's crazy big. So yeah, I did a bunch of clicking through this book because everything is locked at the start, and I didn't read any of it, which is my fault, but I just wanted to get right to the ritual. I think Abra's conjure is this one here, and there's a bunch of chalk types I need to get, but I ultimately have to make this thing. And I don't think I have all the chalk colors. I have like almost all of them. If there's an easier way to get the smithing template, I would be very curious to know that. I think my next step is going to be doing AE2, and I'll probably just slap a storage bus on here. Then allows me to, of course, talk to all of these ingredients. Go upstairs. So this room was where the original sluice was set up, all the ore processing. I've since just kind of started slapping machines down for, you know, processing things. I started doing a bunch of AE2. I'm working on getting a lot of components so we can see I've got all kinds of processors made. And I'm mainly just working my way through the quest book. If you're not familiar with AE2, it is awesome. I plan to do a lot with it, but pretty nice little quest book here. One of the things that's really new to me, because I only used AE2 in a 1.12 and 1.710, is these new versions have these Certus quartz. And if you find a meteor, I guess there's one of these flawless things in there. You can pick it up with a cardboard box. I've got a blaze spawner and wildin hunter that I found on some island, but you can't break this with silk touch. You have to get a cardboard box to move it. And I got a growth accelerator here, growing them. I got an annihilation plane with a storage bus. It's filtered to just store Certus quartz, which is what we got here. So that's passively running. Really cool too. That's weird. Is I guess these versions also have a little bit of a power generation item block. You don't have to do anything with it. You just slap it on there and it provides power. And I guess it's enough power to run all of this. Even this growth accelerator. Maybe not efficiently. Maybe it's running out of power. But apparently you can only put one of these on. Look at that. It just grew. You can only have one of these per network. So there's like a little bit of its own system there. I think that works pretty cool. And again, this drawer is actually hooked up to the overall drawer network that's down below. With a concrete block, I also needed lots of clay. And I didn't notice this for quite a while, but really easy to automate clay as long as you don't run out of gravel or sand. Otherwise the filtering gets screwed up. But as long as you've got sand and gravel with water, it will output into a drawer, which we can see is full. And this drawer is actually not on the network. It's by itself, because I'm immediately taking the clay, pushing it into the access point, and then there's a compacting drawer down there somewhere that's actually storing it as blocks. I haven't done anything else with Oritech. I've just kind of rearranged the piping a little bit. I'm trashing the water over there. I figure path of least resistance, the water that's made as a byproduct of this is not enough to keep this running as a closed loop, but if it backs up, it will actually stop making power. So I'm using the water, trying not to waste it, and I'm running it into this tank, which is probably redundant now, because now that I have 3 pumps making water, we've got lots of water. So anything extra will get trashed at that far distance over there. I don't know if there's a better way to get water yet, but I'm still using these immersive pumps. I don't know what everybody else is doing. I've managed to successfully avoid spoilers, like watching other series. At some point I will, because I like watching other play styles, but I kind of want to do it somewhat blind, so to speak. Oh, one other thing too. I don't know if we can see it. Maybe, maybe not. There's a faint outline of a box down there. A really cool way to use building gadgets was I actually built a box up here, just on the overworld where it's easy to build. And then I pasted it down below. I got an elevator that takes me, you know, up where I built the thing. And we go down one more time. We are in that box. I just kind of copied and pasted it. I've shut it down because everything's jammed full of items. I had a ton of items that were causing lag here. Gotta be careful with that. It's pretty dangerous to have a ton of items just pooling there because they're not getting collected. These were a little pricey to make, but overall the darkroom spawner works great. There's a really cool utility here that stops Enderman from, I guess, teleporting away. You can turn it like off, on. And then the mob masher is awesome. I've got beheading upgrades, luck, sharpness. I don't know why I didn't do this in the beginning, but I should have made a ender chest here and then just imported all these items, you know, up to the top. Notice we can't actually see that drawer network anymore because we're so far away from it. So we have a second drawer controller putting the items here. What I should have done was just made this a ender chest and sent the items, you know, up to the one network. The Vitalic Sourcelink, I guess, generates R's source from mob deaths. So it works, as you can see, amazing. One cool thing too that I didn't realize was so easy with the integrated dynamics is I have an export bus on a trash can and there's no filter on it. Basically, I made a operator card. If item is a boolean, or if item is a damageable type item, oh, true kind of thing. So it's going to export items if they can take damage. What's interesting though is it doesn't do that to items with NBT data. Like I've actually broken these source jars when they're half full. They've been picked up by the hopper. They land in here. They don't get trashed. So neither do these quivers. But if I was to throw a pickaxe in here, like this one, diamonds are cheap, it gets trashed. So it's kind of a little dangerous. You know, I don't want to lose my pickaxes. Speaking of pickaxes, this Blazegold pickaxe from Just Dire Things is awesome. I made a Silk Touch upgrade with another one here. What is it, Fortune 3? Or maybe this was a quest item. I can't remember. But to make, you know, enchanting books, recipes here, it's actually shockingly cheap. Let's look at it this way here. A Silk Touch book is just slime ball and lapis, which is pretty outrageous. And then this Blaze Jet wand here too from Just Dire Things. It is so awesome for, you know, doing this stuff. Go up here. Whoop. Aha, look at that. We got an ender chest full of sky stone. It tells you this in the quest book, but if you put an annihilation plane at build limit, notice, whoop, that's the elevator block. Notice we cannot put a torch because we're at build limit. This thing's facing build limit. We have energy acceptor because there's one of those little, what is it here? Okay, let's try this again. Let's get it right in the source block. I'm really bad at scrolling too far on my my hotbar and then throwing the wrong item into lava. So that's pretty cool. Pick it back up, completely fixed. Yeah, part of the reason I wanted all that Ars Nouveau source was to have these warp portals here. I've set them up basically so I can get around the base without having to walk on the water. Sometimes there's like a time limit on these aqua walkers where you'll eventually just start sinking. But I guess when you play with shaders, the thing doesn't render in. One of the things I'm going to struggle with now is kind of where to put my A2 controller, because putting it underneath the water, essentially, is kind of where I first thought, but then, I don't know. Like, do I have it floating somewhat here? Well, one thing too, you have to go into cheater mode here. In single player, you can open LAN, I think, allow commands. Was it AE2 channel mode? Apparently, and they say this in the quest book, they have it set at ×2. I've actually switched mine back to default because the quest book says they've doubled it. So you typically would have 16 channels, and if you're familiar with AE2 and ad hoc networks, the biggest ad hoc network, which is a network without a controller, 8 channels, but they've doubled it to 16, which is pretty cool in terms of like getting people who don't like AE2 because of the channels to get them playing. But I kind of like the challenge of subnets and all that stuff. What's the other word? P2P tunnels and subnet. Yeah, like this controller here, we grab it, and then if we grab a dense cable, throw the controller down. So typically, you know, you have 32 channels. Well, if anybody else is playing this pack, they're going to have 64. Yeah, right here. Cables and channels. Understanding AE2 channels. They talk about 16 channels per network.